Joining me now to discuss more is NewsNation political contributor Denise Gitsham, who was also a former aide to President G.W. Bush. All right, Denise, I feel like every weekend we've got a whole lot to get to, and today's no exception. So let's talk about what Marcus was just reporting on. Good morning to you.
Yeah. So, what I'm seeing across the country in all of these hotspots is a group of people who are committed to using violence and force and their voices, right? And most of these protesters are in fact peaceful, but those who are not, and those who choose to sort of join in those passions to try to really rewrite law that bipartisan laws that Congress passed a long time ago about what it is to be American and how we become Americans. And so there's this sense that I think from Republicans, especially people like me who are daughters of legal immigrants, people who worked hard to get in line and earn the privilege of becoming an American citizen, that this is not the way a country should be run. It shouldn't be run based on whatever political persuasion a certain city's mayor may have, or their city councils, or even their citizens might have, because these are the established laws of the land. And what really pains me as a former federal employee and as somebody who's served a president and knows what an honor it is to serve our country is that these people who are resisting these laws, many of them, especially the elected officials, are people who swore to uphold our Constitution, which makes the federal law supreme over any sort of state or local jurisdictional laws. And so there's no explanation, there's no legal way to get around the fact that our laws are what they are, and they must be enforced. So coming against those laws in this way in particular is very much a way of sort of upending really what it is to be American in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much friction. So we've been showing people what is going on in Portland, and we're continuing to keep our eyes there. And we're also watching what's going on in Chicago as well. So let's take a listen to Illinois Democratic Congressman Jonathan Jackson. He was on the Hill Sunday, pushing back against Trump's decision to deploy the Guard in Chicago. Let's listen.
You cannot use our military on our soil. This is breaking the law. And Republicans ought to speak up to this, because we all look like immigrants. Who looks like an immigrant? And why is this, very curiously, only targeting the black and brown communities?
Okay, so Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker pushing back on Trump authorizing the deployment of troops as well, writing, quote, "There is no need for military troops on the ground in the state of Illinois." And he goes on to say that state and local law enforcement are working together to make sure people around the Broadview ICE facility are safe. And this comes as Border Patrol agents shot an armed woman after they say their vehicles were rammed by several cars at a protest in Chicago. Another man involved in the ramming was also apprehended by law enforcement. So, wow, Denise. I mean, it's just, there's just so much to wrap your arms around with what is going on right now and what the best solution is.
Yeah, the problem is that always, this is true about politics. We select the narratives that we want to promote to support our side. But in this case, especially with this woman who was shot at, she was an armed protester, and she was one of about 10 other vehicles that rammed and boxed in ICE officers. These are people that Democrats continue to put in a light that makes them the bad guys for enforcing the law. Okay, that is literally their job, is to ensure that the laws, our immigration laws that were bipartisan passed and are supreme over the nation, are actually enforced. And these Democrat elected officials are standing on the side of protesters. And in this case, this woman was armed. Okay, when you have an armed woman with a semi-automatic weapon, which is exactly what happened to this woman who was shot, you no longer have a right to say, I have a right to protest, because it's no longer peaceful. And also, there are multiple federal codes that talk about how illegal it is and how it's not just a misdemeanor, but actually could be a felony if you block ingress and egress and prevent people from being able to come in and do their jobs that taxpayers pay them to do at ICE facilities or any federal buildings. So in every way, shape, and form, there's no legal justification for allowing these protesters to protest the way they have been doing it. And every effort to protect them, including putting up barricades, has been shot down literally by protesters themselves. And that fuel is being fed by Democrats with the ridiculous talking points that we're hearing now that continue to put ICE agents and the American citizens at risk, because they are doxing ICE agent, I think threats have gone up 1,000%. I mean, this is insanity, and it's lawless. Truly, it's lawless.
And it's happening coast to coast. I mean, every time we
It is.
get some of these videos in, and we've got our teams all across America here at NewsNation, and each time we get a report from them, you just think, my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. Think about the people that are driving by these facilities, you know, like you're trying to go
The
get your
Portland
groceries.
Marathon runners today. Oh my gosh, there's going to be a bunch of people trying to run past this. It's nonsense.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right. Well, while I have you, I've got to talk to you about the government shutdown because it's reportedly already costing taxpayers an estimated $1.2 billion. So we've got our eye on that. We've got, you know, big action happening tomorrow on this. So listen, we keep talking about how we're
action.
Yes, yeah. And we keep talking about Republicans addressing both keeping the government open and the health care needs of millions of Americans, how to straddle that line. How's it going to work out? What do you see happening this week?
It really depends on what Democrats decide to do. They're not in a winning position. And this happens every time we have an election. Somebody wins and they're in the winning position, right? Democrats are not the party that won, and therefore they're not going to win on this issue. Eventually, they're going to have to decide how much more damage they want to do the American people by holding out on something that they shouldn't do in the first place. I said this last week, I think, with you, and I think it bears repeating. This is a continuing resolution, not a continuing negotiation. This is about passing and extending for 6 weeks, which is short of the actual amount of time that the Obamacare subsidies that Democrats are raising such a big to-do about end, right? This CR ends on November 21st. Obamacare subsidies that they're talking about end on December 31st. So there's really no justification for them to hold up pay for our military, our veterans. So many different things are happening. Border Patrol, TSA agents, there's so many parts that are critical to our government that they're holding Americans hostage to because they want to, and it's really not even a matter of policy, because if it were, they would come to the negotiation table and talk to Republicans about what it is that they want to fix. But instead, they're trying to upend the entire process. There are procedures in Congress that establish how things are done, and they're trying to upend that by putting in $1.5 trillion additional dollars of American taxpayer dollars spending to get pet projects of theirs, plus these Obamacare subsidies that truly were only passed in response to COVID-era unemployment, which is at 14.5% when people could not get health care. Now our unemployment rate is at 4.3%. That's no justification. Those justifications for those subsidies no longer exist. So we have to have a real conversation about what it is Democrats are actually fighting for. It's no longer justifiable. And the fact that if you capitulate to Democratic demands, and they're holding Americans hostage right now. This is a real situation. You can't negotiate in that situation, or you're just encouraging this sort of behavior in the future. So I say Democrats are responsible lawmakers, and there are plenty of them. Trust me, they will come through and they will do the right thing. I believe it will happen. It's just a matter of when and how much more damage we want to endure.
Yeah, there's been some estimates, you know, that this could take 1 to 2 weeks. We'll see how that goes. And you're so good at the political whip, which is where we go around and talk about a couple of different subjects. So I want to talk about the peace deal, and I want to get your take right now about what you have heard about where we are with that and what you see happening.
Yeah, well, so I'm sorry, you're talking about Israel, right? On
Yes,
Hamas?
Israel, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, it really is funny. I was bouncing around on TV shows this morning, watching what different people were saying. And I was kind of shocked to hear some people say, wow, Hamas only has these hostages left. Are you concerned? I think they were asking some sort of from Palestinian Authority, are you concerned that that's all they have left to negotiate with? When did human beings become something that we could talk about as negotiation chips? I mean, the level of discourse on the other side of this issue from me, which is I'm pro this peace plan, I am pro a two-state solution, and I'm pro-Israel, is really shocking. I think we have fundamentally different beliefs in the value of human life. And I think that when we have conversations like this, I think that this is what I'm so encouraged by, which is the fact that the only thing that's going to actually enable this peace process to work itself out is that Arab nations that really matter agree with us, right? Agree with the president, agree with Israel, that this is something that must come to an end and that Hamas is illegitimate. This is not a negotiation point. Hamas is a designated terrorist organization. They have no role in any of this, and it's up to the Arab countries to ensure that Hamas is no longer in power, and they don't even like Hamas. I mean, this is a destabilizing force. So the fact that the Arabs are at the table and they're totally committed is what's going to ensure that there actually is a lasting peace in the Middle East. And most importantly, that we get our hostages back to Israel.
Absolutely. Denise, I've got to play some sound for you really quick because I want to get your take on what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said when asked about Trump's foreign policy strategy and also if he would run in 2028. Let's listen.
The next Republican nominee, I believe, will be Vice President Vance if he chooses to run. We have a great team, and we all work for the president. Our job is to implement the president's agenda. Can we give advice? Can we give ideas? Yes, but ultimately, he is the person who Americans have elected. And it's an honor to be part of a great team. You mentioned Steve Woodcock. Steve has been a valuable member of this team. In fact, this whole conversation we're having right now about Hamas and hostages would have been impossible had it not been for the efforts of Steve Woodcock and the team working with him. We've just got a great team of people. Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. But ultimately, we work for the president. This Gaza deal would have been impossible without President Trump.
All right, Denise. Stand by for us, Denise. We are just getting our sound now of President Trump. Let's take a listen.
To your plan, the Palestinian Authority may control Gaza the day after Hamas. Now, can you please explain me what is the purpose by doing this if, according to Israel, they are paying to terrorists, they're paying salaries to terrorists?
Who you with?
I'm reporting Israel. My name is Libby.
Well, it's a great deal for Israel, and it's a great deal for everybody. And you want to get your hostages back, right? You want them back, or do you not want them back? And it's a great deal for Israel. It's a great deal for the entire Arab world, Muslim world, and world. So we're very happy about it. Go ahead.
When do you think the hostages will start being freed?
I think very soon. They're in negotiation right now as we speak. They've started the negotiation. It'll last a couple of days. We'll see how it turns out, but I'm hearing it's going very well.
President, are you open to extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies?
We want to fix it so it works. It's not working. Obamacare has been a disaster for the people, so we want to have it fixed so it works. We're going to look at that. It was amazing. Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa. And yet the politicians who are petrified. Look, the politicians are afraid for their lives. That's the only reason that they say, like, there's nothing happening. And you've seen it. The place is burning down, and they pretend like there's nothing happening. So we'll take a look at the order. We haven't seen the order yet.
Mr. President, you're going to celebrate the Navy today. The Navy is deployed in the Caribbean against the cartels. What is the next step of this war against drug trafficking in South America?
Well, we're going to stop drug trafficking, and we've done a lot. There's nobody coming in on the water. That I can tell you. The water is like, there's nobody. There's no drugs coming in on the water, and we'll take a look at what phase 2 is. Made a big difference.
Flexibility on the Hamas plan.
We have very little. We don't need flexibility because everybody's pretty much agreed to it, but there'll always be some changes. But the Hamas plan, I tell you, it's amazing. You're going to have peace, if you think about it, peace in the Middle East for the first time in, they say, really 3,000 years. So I'm very honored to be a big part of that. Look, they've been fighting for a plan for years. We get the hostages back almost immediately. Negotiations are going on right now. Will probably take a couple of days, and people are very happy about it. Well, if they put judges like that on, I wasn't served well by the people that pick judges, I can tell you. Things like that are just too bad. I appointed the judge, and he goes like that. So I wasn't served well. Obviously, I don't know the judge. But if he made that kind of a decision, Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives.
Mr. President,
and you have a judge like that, he ought to be that judge ought to be ashamed of him.
Governor, you say you're targeting the worst of the worst, but Governor Pritzker said that most of the people ICE has taken in no criminal convictions. So which is it?
He's wrong. Number one, he's wrong. Number two, I really believe he's afraid for his life somehow. When you can have 40 or 50 people killed over the last couple of months, hundreds of people wounded, there's no place like that in the world. Hundreds of people wounded, 55 people shot and killed. And Pritzker gets up and says what a wonderful place it is. They need help. Washington, D.C. is now a safe place. You're not going to get mugged or hit. You're not going to get raped. You're not going to get anything. Washington, D.C. went from a hellhole to a safe place. I love the way you nod. Is it true, though? I mean, people, a lot of the people right here were, a lot of the people right here were mugged, reporters. And you know what? You're safe now. Nothing, we've had no crime. It took 12 days to solve the problem, 12 days. And we're going to do that in Chicago. We're going to do that in Portland. Now, Portland's different. That's a bunch of paid insurrectionists. But you have a lot of paid people in Chicago, too. I believe the politicians are under threat because there's no way somebody can say that things are wonderful in Chicago. Almost 55, I think it was 55 people over a short period of time have been murdered in Chicago, have been shot. 222 people over a short period of time have been hit, have been wounded, not died. But 55 people died over a short period of time. You're telling me there's no city in the world like that. We're going to straighten it out. And I think that Pritzker, he's not a stupid person. I think that Pritzker's afraid for his life.
The federal judge on Obamacare subsidies.
We want to make it better.
What about the layoffs? You intend to...
Well, I call them Democrat layoffs. They're Democrat layoffs. They're causing it. We're ready to go back. You know, we have a record-setting economy. We have a record-setting country. Prices are way down. We're doing better than the country's ever done. And the Democrats hate seeing that. It's up to them. Anybody laid off, that's because of the Democrats. Thank you. Okay, let's go.
Okay, you are watching tape playback that happened just moments ago at the White House, and there he goes, President Trump and the First Lady heading to Virginia, as we've been reporting, for a celebration with the Navy, but hitting a lot of topics. I've still got Denise Gitsham with me to talk about some of the comments that Trump made, of course, talking about the peace deal in the Middle East that's ongoing, talking about the government shutdown and Portland burning to the ground, his words. Let's start with the peace deal in the Middle East. Denise, let's get your take on some of the things that he said.
Yeah, I mean, listen, President Trump's leadership in this and his optimism is merited. You know, he is the one that enabled, and everyone said it, all of the Arab countries, maybe they're currying favor with him, I don't know. But the reality is we haven't had anything that was enduring. You know, the Abraham Accords was a great start, and that was such a feather in his cap in his first term. But nobody had the ability, the resources, the relationships that enabled all of these Arab countries that have traditionally not been pro-Israel, obviously, come together and say, hey, we're going to support a two-state solution that we are going to help enforce. And so what he said is, I think, completely merited in terms of his optimism and his hopefulness. And I think everybody in that region is hopeful that there's an end to this war. I mean, nobody wants to live in a constant state of conflict. And so we should all be hopeful that this is some and want to and support any sort of efforts and you know, just even in our commentary, the way we talk about it, the way we think about it as Americans, this is good for everybody. It's peace.
It is, and so many people, it's all eyes on this deal. I mean, this is so important, right. And we are looking forward to hearing the outcome here very soon. As the president heads to Virginia, we are taking these pictures are live. This is Air Force One leaving Joint Base Andrews, heading to Virginia. As we stay on this moment for just a second more here, Denise, I wanted to ask you about what he was saying about Portland, because there has just been so much tension and energy that we were just talking about, and what will become coming next for Portland and what's going on there?
Yeah, when he talks about Portland burning, I think it's important that we all realize that he's also referring to what happened in 2020. You know, back when there were George Floyd eruptions, there was all these protests, and so there's a history in Portland about that he's referring to that is burned in people's memories. When we watched Portland literally burns, Portland, Seattle, other cities burn in protest, and there's a history of democratic capitulation to protesters who are the loudest and most unruly in that city in particular. And then there's even efforts. I think that the mayor of the city and the city council just voted to end the lease for ICE to be able to even be within the city boundaries of Portland. And so it's a real problem. And Trump's not wrong when he says there are protesters that are paid and protesters that aren't. I'm from the West Coast. I kind of think that a lot of these protesters are probably native, maybe not sort of the Soros-backed or, you know, super far left-wing people who pay, these big funders who pay for crowd building and protesters. I think a lot of it is just people don't like President Trump there. And so I'm not sure that it's going to go away unless something is done. And what we've seen is lawlessness. I don't understand how any mayor, any city official, any citizen of Portland would want to see the sort of lawlessness on the streets that we've seen. This is something that something has to be done about it. And that's why you're seeing the National Guard come in. You know, it's one thing to be upset about what the federal government is doing. It's another thing to react that the way that the protesters there have. And it's clear that nobody is willing to step in. No local or state elected officials are willing to step in and regulate the situation and put the city in a situation where they can have conversations about what the future of ICE is in Portland in a rational, logical, nonviolent way.
Right.
And so there's no other option but for the feds to come in and establish peace. And that's what they're going to do, whether it's by force or it's by conversation and negotiation. That's really up to them.
Okay, and we are watching now Air Force One getting ready to take off. This is a live look at Joint Base Andrews. Off he goes to Virginia. And you mentioned the government shutdown. I've got to leave it there, but he said earlier today the show must go on. That's why he's going to Norfolk, Virginia, to have the celebration with the Navy, and we'll be following his movements throughout the day and once he lands as well. NewsNation political contributor Denise Gitsham, thanks for hanging with us for such a nice long amount of time. It was great to have you ride this breaking news with us. Thank you very much, Denise.